basically expressing the thought that for hundreds of years, philosophers were saying what they wish for humankind, and scientists said it's not possible, we cannot do that, we cannot fly or whatever. Now the tables have turned. Now suddenly the scientists are saying what they're capable to do, and the philosophers and the leaders of society go like, no, maybe we should not go that path. I see three main topics that we're dealing with at the World Forum on this general topic. Number one, we started with the help of Maria Reza yesterday morning with our Citizens Court of the World, another entity we've created. We started a social media tribunal with victims, with parents of children that died and victims of cyber stalking and other crimes, to prove in a proper court proceedings what kind of crimes are being committed on social media. So to give proof. The second topic is obviously what we started with Joshua Bengio, the bigger picture, what can be the governing body, who can control the algorithms and the future of digital life, an open question which we need to develop, and everybody's invited to contribute. And there's a third element, a more practical element. What can we do already now, today, while we still don't know where will AI develop? Will there be hell from 2001? Or prosperity, and nobody will have to work, and we will all be happy to have our personal robots? We don't know. But we do know that truth and journalism is under attack, that democracy is vanishing in many parts of the world. And for this reason, we have here with us, that's what my third topic here, how can we create our own social media? How can we create our own search engines? How do we make ourselves independent of Facebook, Instagram, Google? And that's why I would like to give the word to our Nobel Peace Laureate, Maria Reza. And I've invited next to her a gentleman who might be crucial for some of you, because some of what's leading media is here. And we promise you, if you come, you can not only speak with Maria, but also with a gentleman, Matthew Hodgson, who can provide the technology for you to build your own social media. You know, it's striking, when I ask my office, make a list of the 100 leading world's media and how much people are watching, reading, using it, you always have the first number, which is then BBC or whatever, they really have in numbers, but then the second, third, fourth number is like Instagram, Facebook, Google, X. And it's striking that actually social media is controlling the traditional media. And I think the point has arrived where traditional media might consider to create its own social media platforms. So Maria, the word is yours. And Matthew Hodgson, I don't know what you would like to say with Maria, but whoever is here and is thinking about this media company to go into social media and create your own platforms, this gentleman can show you how to do it.
So first you have to know the way social media is designed, and Secretary Clinton said this earlier, the way social media is designed today is exploitative, right? It takes all of our data, privacy is essentially a myth. It has built, they call it models of us, but I use the word clone because I like calling a spade a spade. I'll just pick up, Joshua, hello. From something that, like, where this all began with AI, artificial intelligence, which is neither artificial nor intelligence, from the scientists who have warned us against rolling out AI agents without safety measures built in, right? Because this is what happened. Artificial intelligence began more than 70 years ago, and you have foundational, Joshua Bengio won the Turing Award with Geoffrey Hinton. Oh, wow, they're all Canadians now. With Geoffrey Hinton, who won the Nobel Prize for the image classifier. I think this is part of what was behind OpenAI. But I guess part of what we need to understand and really embrace is that the surveillance capitalism business model is exploitative. And it is something that happened around the mid-90s, starting in the United States, when no restrictions were placed on commercial surveillance. And that directly leads to what the military can do, for example. But then it went hand in hand with the endorsement of advertising as the internet's business model. So literally, we are being sold. And then these big tech monopolies gain ground because they built on top of what DARPA had already done established their monopolies through search. Social media is only a factor because there is AI, very first rudimentary ones, and then they created the marketplaces. Jeff Bezos is a classmate of mine from college. He never wanted to go to the bookstore, so because we were far away from where the bookstore was. But these big American tech companies invested in data collection and processing. Right, so that was the core, and that dominance is hand in hand with state power. You're seeing this now again in this administration with Elon Musk and the new American administration, and that is problematic. Why am I saying this? And we know the harms, you've heard the harms: surveillance capitalism, digital colonialism, biased and oppressive AI systems, particularly if you live in the global south like I do. We clean it up and we bring it right back to you here. But if you're brown, black, LGBTQ+, if you're a child, as you will hear from Biban Kedron, you become a victim in this. AI is not the apex of human progress and scientific achievement. In fact, the science itself is not the way it's been rolled out. And this is where I will pivot to the plus side. 3 years ago, Rappler, the company I started in the Philippines in 2012, where I drank the Kool-Aid of Facebook. We helped make Facebook ubiquitous in the Philippines. It's why Filipinos spent the most time online and on social media globally for 6 years. It's why we elected Duterte. Let me leave it at that. And so after 2021, that all changed. And 3 years ago, we at Rappler realized that we couldn't rely on big tech, which is focused on profit, surveillance for profit, has coded bias, and is essentially killing journalism. And so we began looking at what tech existed. What could we do? And we found something, and that's partly where Matthew can speak to you. We found what Matthew and his colleagues, his engineers, had built in 2014. And I think the reason he survived, the reason they were able to evade Silicon Valley's greed, not you guys, but yeah, Tristan, you partly know. The reason why he was able to do that was he's from the UK, right? Hello, UK. And so Element, which is what built the Matrix protocol, and I'm going to toss it to him and let him tell you about what he built, because Rappler, about a year ago, rolled out a Matrix protocol chat app, and we rolled it out more than a year before our elections in May. Instead of throwing our community back into the toxic sludge of Facebook or X, don't go on X, no. We built the Matrix protocol chat app, and my vision for the world of news, how news organizations will survive here, is federation. It can't be Mastodon because it's too much friction on Mastodon. What we did is you can now have a news group or an organization where the login is connected to your login. And then we can federate the news group on the Matrix protocol, and I'm going to tee it up to young Matthew, not so young, who's been incredible about building this and maintaining it. The Matrix protocol chat app, it goes hand in hand with other protocols, but I think what we focused on this is creating a shared reality. We don't want to personalize the way tech has pushed it, because when you give each person in this room their own personalization, their own personalized reality, we would call this an insane asylum. We have to have a public shared reality. This is why we built our chat app on the Matrix protocol. And I don't want to call it social media. We call it a Matrix protocol chat app. Sorry, it's got too many words, but please try it. I will put it on Blue Sky right now. Blue Sky is on the AT protocol, but that's more like social media. What we want is a shared reality where real people can have real conversations and actually help change the world for the better.
So before we have Matthew say something, as we have many speakers, I suggest everybody gets a time of 1 minute 30, and maybe after Matthew, we're gonna start with people online who cannot stay with us. And afterwards, when everybody who's a speaker has given a statement, we're going to divide up in workshops, in 4 or 5 different workshops to work specifically, and especially whoever is here from the media who would like to speak to Matthew, he can then speak to you and Maria in detail. But maybe you can give us a general impression how to do this, and if it's affordable. I think if it was possible to do in the Philippines, I think we should be possible to do this with any media in the world.
Sure. Well, thank you, Maria, for the opportunity to very briefly explain Matrix and Element. So, as Maria said, in 2014, over 10 years ago now, we created Matrix to be the missing communication layer of the web. Because whilst we have the web for exchanging information, there's never really been a chat fabric, a social media fabric of it. Now we see these days we have Mastodon and Blue Sky, as well as Matrix. Matrix is focusing on real-time chat. Think of it as run your own WhatsApp or run your own Signal style environment. So very useful for the journalistic community sense. When we created it, it was very much a dream to go and create this shared fabric for everybody. And to our horror, it was successful after a few years. We discovered people like the United Nations using it, UNICC. Ironically, the International Criminal Court, I believe, is looking at it as an alternative to being dependent on Microsoft and suffering from US sanctions. NATO uses it.
I was going to say NATO.
Yeah, NATO has it as one of their main platforms. All of France, the whole French state, has a system called CHAP built on it. So it's been very popular for governments who need digital sovereignty, so they're not dependent on the US or dependent on particularly Silicon Valley for a traditional centralized solution. So this is what we've created. However, the horrible wake-up about 2 years in, when it became successful, was that we weren't really building decentralized communication to connect everybody together. The actual problem that had to be solved was this issue of trust, of safety, the issues that come where you go and create a network like this and people need to be safe. And that is a prerequisite for the AI safety issues that we're talking about today. Anyway, if you want to geek out about this, I'm here. Please come and talk to me if you're interested in running your own secure communication infrastructure.
And sorry, the last thing that we did just roll out at the AI Summit is something called Roost, Robust Open Online Safety Tools, right? It was done with the French government, but also with every single tech company that has helped. We raised maybe $28 million, which is rare. A news organization probably can't get that. Yes, Chan? We can't get that, but why? Because this will build, we created at IGP what I called Alcoholics Anonymous for trust and safety people who are working in the industry. They're getting kind of oppressed a little bit by the big tech companies, but they need trust and safety tools. We need trust and safety tools. So that's out. If you're building a platform, Roost will be building safety tools that will be open to all. Sorry, it's too geeking out too much, but the real geeks are there.
So while we are speaking about journalism, truth, etc., there's also much simpler reason to go in another new direction, where I would ask Baroness Kidron from the UK House of Lords, founder and chair of the Five Rights Foundation, also to say something briefly about the danger of our children.
Okay, thank you. I think just before I start on the subject that I was asked to speak about, which is children, I just want to sort of both celebrate what Joshua said at the beginning, but also to maybe put a little bit more urgency into this now, that politicians are short-sighted and commercial interests are too powerful, and we cannot wait for the accident that will make everybody understand this. So I think that although I'm about to speak about a very quotidian and immediate issue, but to get to where the Vatican would like us to go, and I'm not talking about heaven here, I'm talking about their vision for AI, we have to be a lot angrier, yeah? So if I could start with that and then say, I am very proud to be here today to launch the Children and AI Design Code. And like Maria, I have taken a very practical view of what must be done next, because whilst we have this big fight out here, we must also do what we can. And some of the discourse about existential threat, and I want to say I adhere to it completely, does mean that our pockets are being picked right here and now. And among the pockets that are being picked is the childhood of children, i.e. that time from 0 to 18 when you are supposed to learn and develop and make decisions and have an autonomous life of your own. Now, we in the UK, before this current administration who'd like to roll it all back, have had some success in bringing forward legislation, regulation, particularly for children. It's not perfect. In fact, I would say it's not even adequate, but it is something that shows you can, if you ask the right questions, design something consciously. Yeah. And I think, and I do ask you, because there are as many experts in the audience as there are on the screen behind me, and I do ask you to pick up the copy that's on your table and tell us what's wrong with it, because there will be a second version of this with all of your input. So I'm going to finish with saying we need to deal with the quotidian, we need to deal with it now, we need to actually support the braver politicians, we need to be angry, we need to be urgent, and any council that does not have representation for children, 1 in 3 of people who are connected in the world, is not a council that will be fit for purpose. Thank you.
My question to Kate Crawford, sitting up here with us on AI, same thing we asked Joshua Bengio. How can a governing body look like? Is it needed? What could be the way forward?
Well, can I just say absolutely how refreshing it was to hear from the Baroness about the crisis that we're in. And I'm not sure if you can hear me, so I'll just project.
You want it? You want this
yes,
one?
We'll pass it down. I mean, of course, I'm based in the US, so the crisis that we're facing is absolutely very present. I will sing together, Maria.
Yeah, or here.
Come on.
In any house, we have so many speakers, and we didn't have time to rebuild the room because
Amazing.
our guests were speaking a bit longer, and we don't have to set up for the round tables, and we have to improvise. I would suggest that after Kate's statement, the next group of speakers comes on stage. Yes. So while we're going to speak with the people online, the next speakers will come on stage, and we just switch.
So I was just going to add briefly that to concur with the Baroness that we are in a period of crisis. Many of us on this stage have been working on these issues for several decades. I've been in the AI field for 20 years, and I have to say I've never seen anything of the likes of the last 2 years. The change in the industry, the concentration of power, and as Joshua rightly said, the rapid acceleration of risk is now beyond us being able to sit back and say, we'll work on this gradually. This actually requires rapid change. The Paris Summit, which I attended along with Maria and Joshua and several others in this room, I think it was an enormous wake-up call. We went there assuming that there was going to be a shared document addressing forms of AI risk, as indeed there was at Bletchley Park and in South Korea. What we saw was what we say in game theory was something more like a complete defection. We saw nation states refusing to sign any agreement, including the United States and the UK. We saw President Macron stand on stage and hail the raising of $109 billion for the creation of industry in France. What we didn't hear was any type of shared framework, an international vision for how we're going to deal with risks. Yeah. And those risks are social. They're about childhood, absolutely, as the Baroness has said. It's about existential technical risk, as Joshua has said. It's about a collapse of trust and truth, as Maria has powerfully argued. But I want to add one more thing. we face another type of existential risk, and that is climate change. The way that AI is currently built is now accelerating that risk at an extraordinary pace. Data centers have now overtaken the airline industry as having the largest carbon footprint on the planet. And in fact, what we've now seen is that every single query to a large language model uses 10 times the energy of traditional search. We're now hearing from the International Energy Agency that by next year, we will see AI systems using as much energy as the entire nation of Japan. So what we're looking at is a massive acceleration in the use of energy, water, and minerals at a time when we most need restraint and we need caution. So I would just briefly say, if we're looking at the risks of AI that we need to address collectively, they are social, they are political, but they're also environmental. And this is something that is absolutely urgent for our ongoing life on this planet.
Thank you. So I would like to go to our guests online, and meanwhile actually switch you on stage with other speakers who are scheduled to give keynotes or introductory remarks or join the big tech panel. I see Tristan Harris. I believe to remember to see you in the Netflix documentary Social Dilemma. You work with Google. I would like to have from everybody a short statement of a minute 30 on the topics that we're discussing here, and always again the question on a governing body. How can this look like? Who could this be? Tristan, please.
It's a pleasure to be with you all. There's so much to say, and I just so agree with what has already been said between Kate, between Baroness Kidron, between Yoshua Bengio, Maria. Just to say that in our work, how does it bridge between social media and the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, which many of you probably saw? Well, social media, in a way, was first contact between humanity and a mass-produced AI, in which it was a simple curation AI, just selecting which posts hit the eardrums and eyeballs of humanity. And obviously, that simple, baby AI was enough to sort of backslide democracies around the world, break shared reality, cause the breakdown of mental health of young people. And we like to say, I used to be very skeptical of some of my friends who were in the AGI risk community, because I said there was an AI that was already sort of undermining humanity that we've lost control of. We always said if there was a runaway AI system that was optimizing for a narrow goal, that we would just turn it off. And, with social media, we have a rogue runaway AI that's optimizing for engagement. We haven't turned it off and we haven't changed the incentives. And so now as we approach, what we call second contact with AI, which is generative artificial intelligence, I just really want to emphasize the things that Yoshua shared at the beginning. These are AI systems that are demonstrating capabilities that we used to consider science fiction. We used to consider the idea of an AI that is scheming, that is decepting, has deception, can fake alignment, can self-replicate its own code and copy itself to another server. This is extremely serious, and the timelines are very short. And so, I think we're all here on this stage because we want governance to happen. I think we need to get clear about why the incentives keep pulling us away from that. And that is simply that in this race, it is a race to take shortcuts. Because, as Yoshua said at the top, intelligence confers scientific advantage, military advantage, technological advantage. Intelligence is what's given us all of our science, all of our technology. If you have better artificial general intelligence, then you can accelerate all of those advantages. And so it's a competition between nation states to develop those capabilities. And what that amounts to is a race to take shortcuts. And the reason I think at the Paris AI Summit that basically nothing happened is that countries are more living from fear and paranoia that they will be left behind than understanding the common public goods of global safety that are undermined by this race to recklessness. I think we're going to look back on this period like the financial crisis. What was the financial crisis? We had banks that were competing to create financial instruments that would boost GDP. And if boost profits. If I don't do it, I'll lose to the other bank that will. And those instruments did boost economic growth, but they carried with them high systemic risk. And of course, that led to the financial crisis. And I think we have a very similar thing here, where you have AI systems that are promising to boost GDP, but in the way that they are currently being rolled out, carry with them enormous systemic risk. And we don't have a regulator or something that can bail us out in the event that those things go wrong. And I think everyone on this stage wants us to take action before a major accident or crisis appears rather than after. We need some kind of global agreements, and so much more to say, but I'll leave it there given that there's so many other panelists.
We would love to connect everybody also after the World Forum to keep in touch, developing. As we can see, we're trying to find a way. We're trying to define things. You see how we also mix the things here with algorithms, AI, social media. It's all very much connected. What do we feed the learning machine? What is the transparency of the information we give to the learning machine? Who controls it? Who's obliged to show transparency or not? I think we're on the path of finding the right way. And we have here a policy expert with us online, Susan Aronson. As mentioned, we are so many. Everybody has a limited speaking time of maybe a minute 30. But what would be your thoughts on the way forward?
Well, I want to make two broad comments. The first comment is because AI is considered now a general purpose technology, which means it's essential to economic growth, also a dual use technology. That imperative has led almost every government to invest in AI. We are ending up with overcapacity in AI at the same time that we don't govern it effectively, and no one knows how to govern it effectively. I would also argue that I've done research looking at how governments speak with their citizens about AI, and it is a dysfunctional dialogue. So I would suggest that people educate themselves about AI and get greater understanding so they can have voice, and they should demand that voice. I think that is one of the key things that is missing in this discussion. Sweden and Finland created a course for their citizens a couple years ago when I think it was about 2018. And the idea was that they had to have an informed citizenry. And I think given that we are in a monopoly situation or oligopolies, it's up to us to take control of this. And that's harder said than done, but people need to empower themselves. Otherwise, this technology will de-skill them. Thanks.
Thank you. We have two more guests online here. I cannot see the names. Maybe you just take initiative and give your opinion.
Maybe I just hop in because it fits to one of my points, actually. I'm Ruth from Deutsche Welle, Germany's international broadcaster, and I'm a technology manager. So I deal more with the details, right? And not with the big picture. And what Susan said before, I think is very, very important. Knowledge. And another important thing I think is management, is awareness, because that is first thing we have to have, especially at media, because the new technology, or it's not that new anymore, but the technology, I guess at the moment, it affects our core values more than any technology before, and that is trust, credibility, authenticity, and accuracy. And that is first thing, we have to be aware of that. And then we have to create mechanism to deal with it. And one mechanism is to create knowledge and enhance knowledge. And that is, and I think the last thing would be that we have to stick to our deep integrity and loyalty with our audiences. And that is what I loved before, Maria, when you were talking. We have to face our audiences and think of really what is good for them. And if the whole world is talking about personalization, and we find out that we have to have a public shared reality and personalization goes against it, we have to fight that.
Thank you very much, Ruth Kuhn, Chief AI Officer for Deutsche Welle. And now we see that, well, the picture's going up and down. So this is Daniel Solove. Would you like to give us your statement?
Yes. I think that the real core to dealing with the big question is, how does law and policy keep up with rapidly changing digital technologies? And the answer is to hold the creators and users of those technologies accountable. And this is typically how the law addresses things. But unfortunately, there are myths that stand in the way, very common views that seem to be winning out and impeding the law from doing this. One is a myth of AI exceptionalism, that I call this view of AI as something that's so unique and different that we haven't seen it before. We've seen AI before. AI has been developing for 50 to 70 years. These problems have been with us, and they will continue to be with us. We can't see AI as something like so special and amazing that it blinds us to addressing it and makes us flat-footed in doing it. There's a myth that regulation will stifle innovation. And this leads to a lot of governments backtracking on regulating or not wanting to regulate that much. And the argument will win out every time if it's not dispelled. Regulation does not stifle innovation. It stifles innovation that's reckless and careless. But a seatbelt and an airbag is just as innovative as a gas pedal in a car. And regulation will force innovation to focus on how about creating safe AI? How about creating less privacy invasive digital technologies? That's innovation too. But the law has to create the right incentives for that to happen. And these myths just get in the way all the time. And we really have to kind of weed out the myths and fight the myths incredibly hard, or else we'll never get to the policy. We'll never get to the law, because it just won't be a push to do the things that need to be done. And that is that the law needs to really go hard. It needs to really have real accountability. And most of the law does not have real accountability. It's fake accountability and papers that get pushed and stuff that ultimately is meaningless and doesn't really hold the companies and the users accountable.
Daniel, thank you. Yes, I think we all agree with you. I think the accountability is the major topic. Joshua Benju has left us on the Zoom because he's got a meeting with the Canadian government. I hope Mr. Trump didn't put any new plans up for the 51st state. And by the way, it's a great name, Truth Social, right? How you can actually distract people from what the word really means. Very much fitting to what Daniel Solov has been saying here right now. Next to me, we have Mark Rothenberg, president of the Electronic Privacy Information Center. He's the president and founder of the Center for AI and Digital Policy. And I'm sure he's got some thoughts on our topic.
Thank you very much. Is this yes? No?
No.
No.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. Okay, good. So the Center for AI and Digital Policy is a global network of AI policy experts and human rights advocates. We're in over 100 countries. I will say that I started in the field of AI when Jimmy Carter was president. That was a long, long time ago. I've spent the last 5 to 10 years focusing on policy issues, and I hate to be the bearer of good news, but there is good news. You may have read the headlines at the Paris AI Action Summit, but if you actually attended the side meetings, you would have learned about the UNESCO recommendation on AI ethics, endorsed by 194 countries around the world, a positive vision about the use of AI, tackling issues from sustainability to gender equity. You may have heard about the OECD AI principles, the first global governance framework for AI, endorsed also by the G20 nations, 50 countries in support of basic AI principles. At the Paris AI Action Summit, Canada and Japan signed the Council of Europe AI Treaty, bringing to 40 nations the number of countries that have endorsed the first binding international convention in support of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. Governments are making very important advances on AI governance. They're making commitments and they are issuing statements. And my view today is that we need to hold them to their word. We need to make good on their promises. We need to ensure AI governance because this phrase is ambiguous. It must be our governance of AI and not governance by AI. But we are in a moment where either outcome is possible. Democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Those are the foundations for AI governance.
Thank you very much. Yael Eisenstadt is the Director of Policy and Impact at Cybersecurity for Democracy and has also, I think, very valuable insights from the time before.
Okay, this is on? Yes. So one of the points I want to make today is I hope we don't forget the things we haven't fixed yet in our race to talk about AI. I'm going to back up a bit about social media, which is also driven a lot by AI-driven algorithms. So for very quick context, I did go in-house at Facebook in 2018 after about a 15-year career in the national security world to work on their elections integrity issues around the world, and left 6 months later and has spoken very publicly ever since on why. And the reason I bring that up is one of the first questions that people would constantly ask me, journalists would ask me, moderators would ask me when I left Facebook was, so did Mark Zuckerberg put his finger on the scale of the elections in 2016? And I would always say, well, first of all, that's not provable. I mean, I think it's provable with Elon Musk, but I don't think in 2016 I would have said it's provable that Mark Zuckerberg personally put his finger on the scale. But then I said, you're also asking me the wrong question. The question you should be asking is, how have we let one human being have enough power that he could put his finger on the scale? And that is a question we are still grappling with today. And it's not even a question that is quiet anymore. I mean, it's brazen now. We heard a lot in the big opening panel today about the word impunity. So I continue to work on what does accountability look like. And while the US, I'm hoping you haven't all completely lost faith that some of us are still fighting in the US, because at the end of the day, these companies were built and scaled recklessly in the US due to a permissive legal environment that didn't just give them so much preemptive immunity. I would say they gave them impunity to also export their technologies to the rest of the world, that it is incumbent on us to also figure out what do the guardrails look like and how do we fix some of these things? Because it doesn't have to be this way. So I know we only have 90 seconds. I would ask our friends in Europe to hold the line on the values you are trying to put into legislative efforts, because I know it is going to be hard. Our current president is going to threaten every way possible alongside Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg to have you not stand true to the regulations that you have been trying to put into place. And I in the US will continue to fight, whether it's legislatively or in the courts, for what accountability looks like for the very real world effects that are happening not because of free speech on the platform. I am a big defender of free expression, but for what very few individuals who are leading these companies, their business decisions, their designs, and their own tools that are recommending, amplifying, targeting some of the most harmful behavior and activity around the world. And I will keep fighting for that in the US, even if the hill just got much steeper.
Quick question to you, like to everybody else. You see it rather like Mark Rotenberg, who's saying there's so much progress, governments are doing things, we just need to hold them accountable, we have to watch they really do what they say? Or do we need a World Council on AI, whatever you call it, a special unit, knowing that already so many, and so many have been trying, and the UN has put together 2 or 3? What is your opinion?
I do think there is need for some form of a global body. However, the question is who is invited to that table. Because yes, the technology companies have to be part of the conversation, but I will tell you to this day, ever since I left the company, they will not share a stage with me because I am the type of person who will directly confront with knowledge of how it operated when I was on the inside. I think anybody who wants to figure out what the future looks like has to figure out to have both the people affected by the companies, the people who have policy solutions, the people who have national security backgrounds, and the companies themselves, and that will be the challenge, getting all of those people to be able to speak to each other.
It would be wonderful to develop, like, your opinion, also after the World Forum, to keep in communication and see what can develop. The next two panelists, maybe introduce yourselves and give your statement on your thoughts on the topic you've been invited for, and maybe the topic we just discussed.
Hi, I'm David Arditi. I'm a professor of sociology at the University of Texas at Arlington. I am here to do the workshop on, or the working group on algorithms. And as a critic of capitalism, I want to start that with a provocation. So digital technology utopians are pushing an agenda by deploying technology to undercut skilled labor with artificial intelligence. Their goal, replace skilled labor with machines, thereby reducing the cost of labor. Today, we're experiencing an upheaval for labor unseen for high-skilled white-collar jobs under capitalism, so-called artificial intelligence. And I say so-called AI because it is a marketing term that obfuscates the actual technology. Since the goal of these technologies is to replace high-skilled labor with low-skilled labor, I prefer the term algorithmic exploitation, AE. Exploitation is the amount of unpaid value workers create without compensation. This is the point of AI, to reduce the level of skill needed to do a job. AE emphasizes the fact that these programs run algorithms. People make algorithms for specific purposes. AE are algorithms developed by people to follow specific commands. If X, then Y, with large numbers of templates for it to fill in the blanks. And the goal is then to complete tasks identified by their programmers. In other words, yes, ChatGPT can write papers, emails, and even newspaper articles, but they operate in the same logic of Mad Libs. Part of this is social. Humans write in a formulaic pattern that can be easily simulated based on genre. And we have an education system that even teaches formulas to students. And what we need to do is keep repeating that that's the goal that's going on here. Reduce labor.
Great. Shall I go? Can you guys hear me? Yeah. All right. So my name is Lizzie O'Shea. I am the founder and the chair of Digital Rights Watch, a civil society organisation. I'm also a litigator. I work full-time suing technology companies when they've done the wrong thing, and I'm never short of work. I'll put it that way. And I just wanted to contribute to this discussion with 2 points. I appreciate there's not a lot of time, and much that has been said already has been so helpful. The first is that I think in this context, we need to invest in civil society as an antidote to a tech industry that has now, I think, the major tech companies at least have formed a fusion with authoritarian state power in the United States. And in those circumstances, can't be considered a good faith partner in terms of drafting and creating a regulatory environment. So that is a failure. The other aspect of this is that government has for too long prioritised the interests of developing tech over the interests of citizens. In those circumstances, I think the best thing we can do is invest in civil society organisations that are collections of people who are advocates, that are unions. I'm so glad we started to talk about labour, that organise around issues like climate and other topics that are relevant to this industry. And that is where our investment and our focus should lie. Governing bodies are important, but without that civil society strength, without that capacity, we have very little capability of influencing how this debate will unfold. The second thing, which will probably come as no surprise given my introduction of myself, is that I do believe in the power of courts and litigation. I think there is a very significant importance in focusing on the process of designing AI, of governance of those systems. But I actually also think we have to focus on holding companies and governments to account when they fall short of those standards. I spent 5 years of my life suing Uber for engaging in misconduct that gave them a corporate advantage, and I was successful. We managed to extract $280 million from them. It was a very hard-fought fight, and what I would say, I'm also very pleased about it, I'll tell you that, but what I would also say is that no regulator is capable of taking on a company of that size when they've engaged in that kind of misconduct. You need lawyers in court making these kinds of arguments. You need courts who are prepared to look and scrutinise evidence and bring that to the public eye. And that is a form of accountability that cannot just be a statement, that then has to be taken into account in C-suites, which I think is the critical place where these decisions take place. So I think there is an important role in courts and litigation being invited into the discussion of what constitutes regulation and governance of AI, and that will contribute to an improved environment for companies that operate well as holding to account companies that operate badly. And it will create the capability within our societies to actually give meaning to human rights, to the laws that we have on our books. So that's my plea. These kinds of forums are incredibly useful for cross-fertilisation of ideas and discussions, but we do need investment in civil society and a greater capacity in democracies that respect the rule of law to have that enforced through courts.
And can we use some of this 280 million for the AI World Council?
Unfortunately, I've got to give that to people who need to be compensated as a result of these harms. But I think we should do more of this kind of work where you can also seek civil penalties and then that be used to fund and support organisations who are doing this work to make sure that we catch the harm before it occurs and it's not left to lawyers to have to fix it after the fact.
Thank you very much. So